Imagine two paths to freedom. On one side, warriors emerging from the forests at midnight, their faces painted with the ash of resistance, striking terror into the hearts of colonial settlers under the cover of darkness. On the other, men in tailored suits, seated around polished mahogany tables in London and Paris, wielding not machetes and rifles, but memoranda, constitutional drafts, and the quiet power of eloquent persuasion. Both were fighting for the same thing, the liberation of Africa. But their methods could not have been more different. Between 1952 and 1962, Kenya bled while Senegal negotiated. The Mau Mau fighters chose the bullet, Léopold Sédar chose the ballot. And yet, both won their independence. The question that haunts historians to this day is this: which path built a stronger nation? Which strategy, armed defiance or diplomatic tact, better secured the long-term stability that independent Africa so desperately needed? Today, we dissect the strategic tension between guerrilla warfare and constitutional conferences. We analyze the battlefield logistics alongside the negotiation tables. We ask the hard question: was it better to fight or to talk? Welcome to Decroly History Hub, where we don't just tell history, we interrogate it. Part 1: The Two Faces of Decolonization. The decolonization of Africa was not a single story. It was a tapestry woven from different threads, each nation finding its own path to sovereignty. Some seized freedom through the barrel of a gun. Others negotiated it with a fountain pen. By the mid-20th century, the winds of change were sweeping across the continent. But how that change arrived depended on a complex calculus: the nature of the colonial power, the presence of European settlers, the unity of the nationalist movements, and the willingness of the colonizer to concede. In this episode, we compare two archetypal paths. Path 1: Armed resistance, embodied by the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya, where guerrilla fighters took to the forests to wage a bloody war against British colonial rule. Part 2: Diplomatic negotiation, embodied by Léopold Sédar Senghor in Senegal, who used his brilliance as a poet and politician to negotiate a peaceful transition from French colonial rule. Both achieved independence. But the legacies they left behind were profoundly different. Part 2: The Armed Path, Mau Mau in Kenya, the spark of defiance. Kenya in the early 1950s was a land of deep divisions. White settlers, numbering only about 30,000, controlled the most fertile lands in the White Highlands. They lived in comfort while over 1 million Kikuyu, the largest ethnic group, were crowded into reserves, denied land, and subjected to oppressive labor laws. The Kikuyu Central Association, led by Jomo Kenyatta, had lobbied for redress through petitions and delegations. But by 1952, patience had worn thin. A militant wing emerged, taking an oath of unity and secrecy: the Mau Mau. The Mau Mau fighters did not see themselves as terrorists. They saw themselves as freedom fighters, defending their land and dignity against an alien oppressor. They operated from the forests of the Aberdare Range and Mount Kenya, launching guerrilla attacks against settler farms, police posts, and African royalists. The British response: the British responded with overwhelming force. In October 1952, they declared a state of emergency. The army and police were reinforced, and the Kikuyu were subjected to collective punishment. Over 80,000 Kikuyu were herded into protected villages, essentially concentration camps, where they were interned, screened, and brutalized. The British used every tool of counterinsurgency: aerial bombardment, mass arrests, detention without trial, and torture to extract confessions and information. Kenyatta was arrested and tried on charges of orchestrating the rebellion. He was convicted in a deeply flawed trial and sentenced to 7 years imprisonment, later extended to indefinite detention. The human cost was staggering. Approximately 11,000 Mau Mau fighters and supporters were killed. Over 1,800 African civilians died at the hands of security forces. 32 white settlers and British soldiers were killed. Over 100,000 Kikuyu were forcibly relocated or detained. The Mau Mau rebellion was ultimately suppressed by military force. But it had achieved something profound. It had shattered the myth of British invincibility. It had shown that Africans were willing to die for their freedom, and that the cost of holding Kenya would be enormous. The road to Uhuru. By the early 1960s, the British government had concluded that maintaining colonial control over Kenya was no longer worth the price. The financial and moral costs were too high. In 1961, Kenyatta was released from detention. In 1963, Kenya achieved independence under his leadership. The Mau Mau fighters who had survived returned from the forests not as heroes, but often as outcasts, their sacrifices largely unacknowledged by the new government. The path of armed resistance had achieved independence, but at a tremendous cost in lives, social cohesion, and economic disruption. Part 3, The Diplomatic Path, Senghor in Senegal. The poet-politician, Léopold Sédar Senghor was the antithesis of a guerrilla fighter. Born in 1906 in Joal, Senegal, he was a brilliant scholar who became the first African to teach in a French lycée. He was also a poet, one of the founders of the Negritude movement, which celebrated African culture and identity. Senghor believed that Africa's liberation could be achieved through cultural assertion and political negotiation, not armed struggle. He saw himself as a bridge between Africa and Europe. As he put it, "I am a man of two worlds, but I belong fully to both." In 1946, Senghor was elected as a deputy to the French National Assembly. He used his position to advocate for the rights of African peoples within the French Union. He was a master of the art of persuasion, combining intellectual firepower with political cunning. The evolution of French policy, France's approach to decolonization differed from Britain's. The French had long pursued a policy of assimilation, which sought to make Africans French citizens. While this was deeply paternalistic, it also created a class of African elites, who were integrated into the French political system. When the Fourth Republic fell in 1958 and Charles de Gaulle returned to power, the French offered a choice: independence or membership in a new French community. Guinea chose immediate independence and was cut off. Senghor chose a different path. He argued for a negotiated transition that would preserve close ties with France while securing Senegal's sovereignty. In 1958, Senegal became an autonomous republic within the French community. In 1960, full independence was achieved without a single shot being fired. The Senghor model, Senghor's diplomatic strategy, rested on several pillars. Cultural pride. He argued that African culture was equal to European culture, but that the two could enrich each other. Political pragmatism. He understood that Senegal lacked the military strength to defeat France and that negotiation was the only viable path. International alliances. He built relationships with French leaders, African nationalists, and the broader international community. Constitutional expertise. He was deeply knowledgeable about French law and used this expertise to craft a favorable settlement. The outcome. Senegal achieved independence with its infrastructure largely intact, its political institutions functioning, and its economic ties with France preserved. Senghor became the country's first president and served until 1980, a remarkably stable transition compared to many other African states. The cost. Senegal remained economically dependent on France. Its currency was pegged to the French franc. French advisors continued to play a role in governance. Some critics argued that Senghor had negotiated not true independence, but a neo-colonial arrangement. Part 4, The Comparative Analysis 1. The nature of the colonial power. Kenya, British. The British in Kenya were committed to maintaining a white man's country. They had invested heavily in settler agriculture and were unwilling to concede easily. The presence of a large, entrenched settler community made armed resistance almost inevitable. Senegal, French. The French were more flexible, partly because Senegal's economy was less attractive to settlers. France was also grappling with the brutal war in Algeria and wanted to avoid another conflict. Senghor's willingness to maintain close ties made a negotiated solution palatable. 2. The unity of the nationalist movement. Kenya, the Mau Mau were largely a Kikuyu movement, which alienated other ethnic groups. The colonial authorities exploited these divisions, recruiting loyalists from other communities to fight the insurgency. Senegal, Senghor was able to build a broader coalition, partly because the French system had created a class of educated elites across ethnic lines. The nationalist movement was more inclusive and less fragmented. 3. The international context. Kenya, the Cold War was intensifying, and the British were concerned about Soviet influence in Africa. They feared that a prolonged guerrilla war would create a vacuum that communism could fill. This pressured them to find a political solution. Senegal, France was focused on maintaining its global influence. It was more willing to negotiate with Senghor because he offered a model of cooperation that preserved French interests. Part 5. Which part secured long-term stability? The case for armed resistance. Mau Mau's strengths, demonstrated an unyielding commitment to freedom, forced the colonial power to the negotiating table, created a powerful national narrative of sacrifice and heroism. Weaknesses: massive loss of life and destruction of infrastructure. Deep ethnic divisions created by the conflict persisted. The fighters who sacrificed the most were often marginalized. The transition to independence was rushed and chaotic. The case for diplomacy: Senghor's strengths, preservation of life and infrastructure, peaceful transition of power, continuity of governance and legal institutions, better positioning for economic development. Weaknesses: claims of neocolonialism and continued dependence on the former colonizer, less radical transformation of economic structures. The political elite remained closely tied to French interests. Part 6. The long view: what history teaches us. When we look at the decades since independence, the picture is complex. Kenya, following independence, Kenya experienced significant economic growth and political stability under Kenyatta and his successor, Daniel Arap Moi. However, the country also faced authoritarian governance, ethnic tensions that erupted in violence during the 2007 elections, and persistent inequality. The Mau Mau veterans were not compensated for their sacrifices until 2013, when the British government finally apologized and agreed to pay £19.9 million in reparations. Senegal has been one of Africa's most stable democracies, with peaceful transfers of power and a vibrant civil society. It has avoided the coups and civil wars that plagued many neighbors. However, it remains heavily dependent on France, with French military bases still present and the CFA franc still pegged to the euro. Economic challenges remain significant. The verdict: the evidence suggests that diplomatic negotiation, when it is a genuine option, provides a more stable foundation for post-colonial governance. Armed resistance, while heroic and necessary in some contexts, leaves deep scars that take generations to heal. However, we cannot judge the Mau Mau's choice as wrong. In Kenya, diplomacy had been exhausted. The British were not listening. The settlers were not willing to share power. For the Mau Mau, armed resistance was not a choice, it was the only option left. Senghor's path was made possible by a different set of historical circumstances: a more flexible colonial power, a less entrenched settler population, and a nationalist leader who had already built bridges to the metropole. Conclusion: 2 parts. 1 Destiny. The story of African decolonization is not a morality tale where one method was right and the other wrong. It is a story of strategic calculation, of leaders making difficult choices in impossible circumstances. The Mau Mau fighters chose the bullet because they believed the ballot had failed them. Senghor chose the ballot because he believed the bullet would destroy what he was trying to build. Both achieved independence. Both contributed to the broader struggle for African dignity. And both left legacies that scholars still debate. Perhaps the most important lesson is this: the method of liberation shapes the nation that emerges. The scars of armed struggle do not disappear with the lowering of a colonial flag. And the compromises of diplomatic negotiation can entangle a nation in dependencies that last for generations. The Pan-African dream that Nkrumah, Kenyatta, and Senghor all shared was not just about flag independence. It was about true sovereignty, economic, cultural, and political. Whether achieved through the rifle or the pen, that struggle continues to this day. We have seen that freedom comes in many forms. Sometimes it is seized, sometimes it is granted. But in the end, it is not how you win independence that matters most, it is what you do with it. So, who had the better strategy? The Mau Mau's bullet or Senghor's ballot? There is no easy answer, and that is exactly why history matters. It teaches us that context, timing, and leadership all shape the outcome in ways we cannot predict. But here is the question we want to leave with you: if you were leading a liberation movement, knowing what we know now, which path would you choose? Would you fight, or would you talk? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one and love a healthy debate. If this deep dive into African strategy and sovereignty got you thinking, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Join the Decroly History Hub family, where we go beyond the textbook to uncover the tactics, tensions, and truths that built our modern world. Sharing is caring. Pass this video along to a friend who needs a fresh perspective on African history. And as always, stay connected. This is Decroly History Hub, keeping the past alive for the future. We'll see you in the next one.